time. By the way, none of them get paid for it. So every single influencer you saw did it because they wanted to promote this way of eating. So I just thought that was pretty cool. Just so you know, all right. So there was no money changing hands. That's what happened. They did it for nothing. Anyway, over the next couple of weeks, I'll be chopping those into 30 minutes or 60-minute sections so everyone can review them, and they'll be subtitled. There will be sort of timestamps so you can find the information you want to find. Not every single one will be edited because a few of the guests had very choppy, awful Wi-Fi, so you couldn't hear half of what they were saying, which was a bit of a shame. So anyway, right, that's the housekeeping out of the way. Also, for those that are listening on the audio podcast, yes, welcome. We've been doing these Sunday lives for a long time, and I've never actually converted them to audio podcasts really on a regular basis. But from now, they will be out as a podcast, audio podcast as well. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my boring 2-minute introduction. I confused Richard because I sent him 2 links, one for this Sunday and one for next Sunday. And I think he hooked up next Sundays for a couple of people. So that's why I'm waffling. But we're going to get off the waffle now. We're going to get away from the waffle. And I'm going to say to Richard Smith, are you ready to rumble?
Good evening. And I am most certainly ready to rock and roll.
Excellent.
Yes,
that's really
apologies.
good.
I've just had to take off the link that I misread in the message you sent. I posted the wrong link. So I've posted next week's link for everyone on my YouTube channel. Obviously, we're not live currently next week. So I've had to take that down and redo it. So apologies for the confusion, but we should be live. I hope.
Right. Well, here we are 3 minutes in. And hopefully everyone will catch up. And there's a brilliant question, which I'd like you to cover, Richard, from My Healthy Supplies, which is also Joshua and Lucy, who are new members of the school community. So thanks for joining. I think we really told people about that on the 24-hour live stream, and we've had a nice take up of members looking at that. Anyway, this is a really common question. So maybe you can answer Joshua and Lucy's question, but also just make it a quite broad thing. Is there a recommendation for a maximum daily amount of MCT per day that we should take?
But let's think about what MCT is. It's a natural fat. It's a fat that is found in coconut. It's a fat that is found in animal proteins. The beauty of MCT is that it contains short chains. So it only contains a very short chain of carbons compared to medium or longer chain triglycerides. So we can get short chain, medium, and long. The beauty with the medium is their ability to be sent straight to the liver through the hepatic portal vein, and their ability to convert into energy or ketones incredibly quickly. So this is a natural fat, and living an ancestral appropriate diet or low carb ketogenic lifestyle, these are the compounds that we want to consume. In regards to an upper limit, it depends on your tolerance. MCT oil in particular can cause gastro distress, but again, just gravitating into the lifestyle and being new to consuming more animal proteins and natural fats can do this anyway, with the upregulation of bile acids and the inability for the small intestine to reabsorb these, which leads to gastro distress. MCT oil is well known for this. This is why the powder version that I manufacture is usually preferenced. It tends to have far less issues in regards to gastro distress. But in regards to the amount, I mean, it's a fat. We need lots of fats. Now, the fact that it converts into energy quickly doesn't necessarily mean that it's the healthiest fat. Its purpose is different to other fats that we would consume. All these fats have different purposes. One of the beauties of MCT is its ability to help fight infection in regards to SIBO and other infections. It helps increase the biodiversity of the gut. So it's incredibly good for us. In fact, MCT is the most antimicrobial substance that's available without a doctor's prescription. So that has its uses, but the body also needs other fats, which we get from our animal protein. So I'd say in regards to preference in the type of fats, we should always preference the fats from animal proteins and then use these as additions. But in regards to the amount, it's whatever suits you. I mean, I probably take maybe 4 scoops of the powder per day, depending on what I have on. I've added some to the electrolytes here, which is probably my third for the day today. I may have another when I come off. And that's the other thing in regards to MCT. Even though it converts into ketones, it's not a stimulant. So ketone production can be beneficial to aid with sleeping and reducing inflammation. So this is something that I will consume before we go live, before a public speaking event, but it's something that I'll consume just before bed also. So that's number 3 for me today. Number 4 may or may not come, depending on how I feel. I would probably get away with consuming that amount in oil, but the average person who's new to the lifestyle wouldn't. So if you are consuming the oil, I would consume considerably less. Start with a teaspoon and slowly build up to a tablespoon. Once, twice, three times a day, maybe. But it is very much an individual approach. Your body will tell you if you've overconsumed, because it will lead to that gastro distress. So I know it's one of those answers that is very grey, but it is very much a grey question in regards to how much should I consume. It's going to be different depending on the person, but you can comfortably consume a few tablespoons per day should you be adapted to the oil.
Yeah, great answer, Richard, as always. And I think one of the things I want to say for those that don't understand gastro distress, we're talking like a bubbly stomach or a tummy ache, as we used to say as kids. I've got a bit of a tummy ache. You'd know what that actually means. Richard, of course, supplies electrolytes, which is why I just want to sort of put a tin lid on this, which is why we get questions about it. It's not the other way around. We're not trying to sell electrolytes, MCT oil. We get questions. Exactly the same as if someone, let's use a different example, some guest came on and they were well known for for curing male pattern baldness. Let's just say they could make men's hair regrow. Every question would be about it. That's it. All right. It wouldn't be the fact that he's selling anything. It would be the fact that we've got him as a guest and people are interested. All right. So we're not trying to flog your stuff. We're not trying to sell your stuff. We're just answering the questions. So we'll lead on to the next one. Oh, by the way, thank you for the new member there, Lee. That's appreciated. And also, really nice comment from Ribeye Rob. This is the best carnivore discussion on the internet. Well done, Stephen and Richard. That's very nice. And a super chat of £5. You can always do the super chat. One of the things that came up on last week's 24-hour, I think, is that Richard's channel doesn't accept super chats at the moment. So that might be something that I'll convince him about, because people want to show their support, Richard. And quite a few people messaged me and said, I want to pay a little bit of money just to thank Richard, and I can't seem to do it. And we were in the middle of a live stream, so I couldn't really. But I know we're in the middle of a live stream now, but Richard is so busy, I can't get him in the week. Right. So we're going to whiz through the questions that are related to electrolytes and hopefully broaden out the subject as well. Okay. So Zinc 316. But then again, this is all part of the journey. It's all about Ask Us Anything. Just bought your MCTs and electrolytes. What's the limit per days for electrolytes? I think we're going to say the same sort of thing, aren't we?
Very much so. It is very much an individual approach. Now, the reason that sodium is preferenced when we begin the lifestyle is because insulin drops, and this signals the body to release sodium from the kidneys. So it leaves us devoid.
Sorry, that's the extra bit to the question, and I feel really jumping in, but I want to help you with this because Zinc has then added, should I mix with water throughout the day, worried about overdoing, in particular, potassium?
So, brilliant question. So the sodium is very, very much preference because insulin has dropped, and it's signaled the body to release the sodium from the 4 points in the nephrons in the kidneys, which is one of my favorite sayings, which I was... Somebody commented on who was it? It was Andrew Bott, good friend of mine, commented on something I posted recently about me saying that as being one of my 4 points in the nephrons in the kidneys, Richard Smith. So anyway, yeah, that's one of my favorite ones. But basically, when we begin a low carb, ketogenic, carnivore based lifestyle, sodium drops, and we need to replace this. And one of the best places that we can replace from is a Celtic sea salt. But this doesn't cut it for most people. So we find we need to supplement with a sodium supplement, which is what I do, electrolytes. Now, the issue if we supplement with too much sodium, now, when I say too much, and I'll try to give this the answer that it deserves. Studies have shown that we need close to 4,000 to 6,000 milligrams of sodium per day to be in an optimal range. And this is based on what has been excreted from the body. I consume closer to 10,000. This is taken from a study that covers 100,000 participants over 17 countries, and it shows an inverse association between sodium consumption and all-cause mortality. Basically, what it showed was that the less sodium you consume, the higher risk you are of death. So we need sodium. So we preference the sodium, so we need lots of sodium. The issue is with increase in sodium, it depletes potassium. It depletes potassium. If we look at the Stone Age man would have consumed around 15,000 milligrams of potassium per day, which is an awful lot. Yet we're told in the media that potassium is detrimental to our health. Now, this is the reason that the electrolytes I do have high sodium, because if we look as nature intended, the sodium and potassium are both preferenced, but potassium is preferenced more in nature. If we look at a piece of beef, there's 4 times more potassium than there is sodium, and then it drops right down then to calcium and magnesium, which are around equal ratios. So to eat an evolutionary appropriate amount of electrolyte, we need potassium. So potassium is incredibly important. Another issue with gravitating into the lifestyle is that we can suffer with things like oxalate dumping or oxalate detox, which can lead to hypokalemia, which is a depletion of potassium again. So we need extra potassium. So potassium is incredibly important within the body. In regards to how much, I add electrolytes to all of the water that I drink. I do a lot of training, so my requirement is it may be higher than the average person. Some people find that they don't need to supplement with so much. Our good friend Anthony Chaffee doesn't use electrolyte supplementation. He gets everything that he needs from the diet, which you can do by consuming the cartilage on the chicken bones and the connective tissue on the bones, organ meats, grinding down the bones, making bone broth, and so on and so forth. So there are means of doing this naturally. The fact is, many people avoid organ meats. They don't eat the knuckle on the bone. They don't crush the bones for the marrow. They don't make bone broth. They don't eat the connective tissue. These are the bits that we typically cut off. So in these circumstances, the supplementation of electrolytes is a fantastic addition to a healthy lifestyle. It is very much an individual thing, as you say, Stephen. It's I add electrolytes to all of the water that I drink. I don't drink water very often without them. I probably consume, my goodness, how many have I had today? I've lost count. The electrolytes they're required by the body by much higher levels than we're led to believe. And the body is an incredible machine. It tells us if we're consuming a compound that we shouldn't be. This is why when we gravitate into the lifestyle and we consume something that contains lectins, then we get this exaggerated response. So when we've gravitated into the lifestyle and we haven't consumed any rubbish for so long, and then we put some rubbish back in, bread, pasta, rice, a sugary treat, so on and so forth, we get this reaction. Now, many think that living this lifestyle has made them intolerant. The lifestyle hasn't made you intolerant. What's happened is this lifestyle has enabled you to recognize when your body is consuming a toxin again. And we've almost become numb to this over years of abuse, in the same way that we do with alcohol. So alcohol consumption, for example, the first time we drink a beer or a glass of wine, we feel tipsy, we get lightheaded. The next time we can consume twice as much until we get that same response. And then weeks and months down the line, we find we can drink lots and lots of alcohol and not get as drunk or as tipsy as quickly. It doesn't mean that the alcohol isn't causing the damage. It just means our body's ability to recognize it has been diminished. And it's the same with these toxic compounds that we consume on a daily basis. So when we've removed these and we put them back in, the body gives this exaggerated response. So it's incredibly intuitive and clever. And it's the same with electrolytes. If we consume too much sodium or too much potassium, we'll feel unwell. We'll start to feel not quite right. The body is the best tool to enable you to govern whether you were eating or consuming too much or too little of a compound. Do it intuitively. You know, add the electrolytes to your water, space throughout the day, and you can even reduce the serving. I would always preference to consume more throughout the day, or less throughout the day, I mean, in regards to serving size, but keep the level consistent rather than spiking and crashing with bigger servings and having longer in between. But if we look at the amount of potassium that I consume, I mean, how many have I had today? 1, 2, I may have had 6 today. And I think in the serving size we got now, that's 500. So I've had well in excess of 3,000 milligrams of potassium, and I'll consume another 2 or 3 before bed. You know, so it's not something I'm concerned about when we are living this lifestyle in particular. I think it's potassium when we are living low carb, ketogenic, over carnivore based lifestyle. I think it needs to be preferenced.
Excellent. I will not add my 2 penneth because we've got so many questions. I'm going to go to the next one. My healthy supplies, which again is asking this question, another kind of emergency question, if that's okay. My wife's aunt has told us tonight her doctor wants to put her on a statin. Her HDL is 1.12 and LDL is 3.2. Don't know triglycerides, but her total is 5.1. Do you have any resource to persuade her otherwise? Well, we're not doctors. We're here to give you information and educational content. We can certainly tell you about studies. So I'm going to screen share a study. I think Richard looks like he was going to do that as well, but I'll just quickly screen share a study. Yes, there's loads of stuff about statins. You could go onto YouTube, for instance, and search Dr. Paul Mason, statins. You could do that. And you basically could, let me just get rid of that question. So let's hide your current question so we can look at this. Yes, if you look Dr. Paul Mason, statins, you will see fantastic resources. On our school community, we have a free ebook, which is all the LDL studies. And of course, the association between saturated fat or cholesterol and heart disease is all based on fraud about 70 years ago, when the Sugar Research Foundation funded 2 researchers at Harvard to lie. It's really that simple, and not implicate sugar, but implicate fat. So all of the stuff about LDL is based on a 70-year-old lie, and it's never been proven. But I can always send these studies if you email me at zerocarbcoach@gmail.com. Quite happy to send all this information because it's all backed by links that you can look at. But this little graph here just shows you the association between low density lipoprotein cholesterol. Cholesterol, by the way, is the same whether it's in HDL or an LDL or VLDL, or basically low density lipoprotein is the carrier, is the container of cholesterol and other substances, other compounds. So, right, what does this show you, this chart? This chart shows you that when you look at 86,000 different patients over a 5-year period, and all of them will die, of course, because we all have one death per person. You know, I'm going to die. Sorry, even though I'm carnivore, I am aware that I will die. So this graph starts at 1, really. So that means your chances of dying are 1 in 1 at some point. But anyway, when people did die, they looked at their levels of LDL cholesterol, and the red line shows you that their risk, there was twice as many people dying with low cholesterol than with high. That's the fact. You know, the posh way they said it was that, let's have a look. If you have high cholesterol, it appears you are likely to live longer than those with low cholesterol. Over 50% of people who die of a heart attack have normal or low cholesterol. There is absolutely no validity in the high LDL cholesterol being linked to heart attacks. And these studies are not just one, there's hundreds of studies. And you do mention HDL and triglycerides. We haven't got the triglycerides number. We're not going to get into the calculations, but basically a much better indicator seems to be, and we're not saying it's causal, we're just saying that the correlation, if you're looking at association between these things, there is a better, stronger, more significant, whatever you want to say, correlation between having low triglycerides and high HDL than there is for low density lipoproteins. And there's hundreds of studies. I'm not going to bore you with just going through the screen and all that sort of stuff. So let's just stop that. Let's get that off the screen. So yeah. Then you can do your independent research on statins if you want. Like I say, I think Dr. Paul Mason is great, and I think Richard has put some things in the chat for you to have a look at. So That's my two penneth. I just want to say one of the things that made me laugh was there was a thumbnail of Peter Attia, who was a big proponent of LP(a) and believing all this stuff still. And the title said "useful tool for such and such," and I thought, yeah, there is a useful tool. So I think you've got to look at the information. If you are looking at information that is based on fraud and still believing it, then you need to wake up, especially 70 years later when there is no categoric causal effect proven. Absolutely. There's a lot more to this. But anyway, sorry, Richard, I know you're dying to say something, but I thought I'd just screen share that study, for instance.
Yeah, spot on. Look, I was going to share, I've posted a link to the first ever video that I recorded and posted, and it was to do with cholesterol. So take a look at that because it's only got 1,000 views. So take a look to see if we can get those views up on that. It's a fantastic video. It's about 15, 60 minutes long. I was going to share my screen and show a famous British Medical Journal paper, which covered 68,000 participants and showed an inverse association between high LDL and all-cause mortality, representing 92% of the participants. In other words, just to reiterate what Stephen says, the higher your LDL, the lower your risk of death, not the other way around. LDL heals and repairs the body. This is what LDL particles do. They travel through the body, dropping off lipid cargo to heal and repair the body. Completely agree with triglycerides. That's the one that we want to reduce. We can do that by living a low-carb, ketogenic, or carnivore-based lifestyle while avoiding things like grains, lots of sugars, and fructose. But just to come back to the statins question, statins block or partially inhibit something called the mevalonate pathway. The mevalonate pathway is one step before we create ubiquinone, which is coenzyme Q10. Coenzyme Q10 is used for many things in the body, one of which is the production of DNA. So in what world would taking a drug which prevents one from creating DNA be a good thing? It can't be, plain and simple. So, I mean, cholesterol isn't the problem. High triglycerides could be, so we need to address those, but I don't believe, and again, not medical advice, just my opinion, high triglycerides would be the lever to pull, and in order to do that, we need to eat an evolutionarily appropriate diet full of natural fats, including saturated fats, animal proteins, while avoiding a high carbohydrate-based lifestyle, particularly from grains and seed oils. Seed oils and grains or glucose are going to be the two biggest contributing factors because sugar or glucose wipes out and destroys the glycocalyx, which is the arterial wall's first line of defense. So this is initially what causes the damage. It takes 8 to 12 hours to replace the glycocalyx, but yet we're told to eat little and often, therefore never allowing the glycocalyx to recover. And this will allow undigested, I'm going off one actually, this will allow damaged protein molecules, not undigested, damaged protein molecules to travel into the subendothelial space in order to heal and repair the body, where the damaged particles, which have become oxidized through seed oils, become engulfed by macrophages. They have what's called a scavenger receptor, and they recognize the ApoB100 damaged receptor, which is now on the LDL particle after it's become oxidized. They will pull this oxidized and damaged particle in, and they'll cram it in until it becomes a foam cell, and there is the start of an atherosclerotic plaque. But it comes from damaged LDL, not healthy LDL. Our bodies produce healthy LDL when we give it the tools. And just to reiterate what damages that LDL particle, it's glucose and vegetable oils. Vegetable oils such as rapeseed, grapeseed, sunflower oil, safflower oil, canola oil, so on and so forth. The saturated fats do not damage our LDL particles.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Right. Okay. Another question's come up, and I'm going to do a screen share again. I'm really sorry about this, but I heard today that too much protein or fasting on carnivore causes hypoglycemia. That's very low blood sugar for people that are not sure what that means. Excess protein is converted to sugar and causes high blood sugar. She mentioned gluconeogenesis, which is the making of new glucose. What do you think? Well, what do I think? I think that we need to do a screen share and show you that this has been disproven constantly, and give you a little bit of just a little bit of background, and then we'll come back to why people think this. So the University of Michigan did a study. Now, when they did a study, they did exactly what you think or what you heard. And they just assumed, they were so arrogant, they just assumed that at least half of the protein would actually turn to blood glucose. And they were so cocky that basically they looked at blood sugar after giving participants 53 grams of glucose. They also did bread with butter. They also did apple lean beef, but they also did a particular dosage of the beef, which was 106 grams of protein. All right. The reason for 106 grams of protein, but they were absolutely convinced that that would equate to 53 grams of glucose. So they gave these people 53 grams of glucose, and of course that spiked their blood sugar. Let's just go straight to 5. Which is number 4, which is the beef, 106 grams. Here's the beef, and that did not spike blood glucose, as you can see. So that's the beef. That's 106 grams of protein, not spiking blood glucose. But the apple, the bread, the butter, all of that did. All right. Number 5, by the way, is the blood urea nitrogen. That's a different thing that we could talk about. So there's the first thing: blood glucose from glucose spiking, and the same alleged amount from beef protein, 106 grams, did not do a spike. They did not do a spike in another test. But anyway, this is really interesting as well, because they did what's called, this is a different university many years later, they did what's called doubly labeled carbon and nitrogen. So that was amino acids from eggs. The protein from eggs was actually given a marker, so it could be traced. So it could be traced from the egg through the body and into the blood glucose. So we could categorically say, using the glucose flux test, which is sort of at intervals, time intervals, constantly measuring the blood glucose with this huge ingestion of amino acids, this huge amount of protein here, and this was what we got. Here's the response. Pitiful amount of blood glucose was coming from those amino acids, and I spoke to Bart Kay about this. It's something like 3% tops of that amino acid became blood glucose directly, those amino acids. And that was in a situation where they were trying to make sure that the carbon and nitrogen that was doubly labeled, they wanted to prove this hypothesis that eating too much protein makes your blood glucose go up. Well, it doesn't. There is a bump in blood glucose for some people. It's not directly from the protein. It's sometimes because your body will go into a state of slight hypoglycemia, because the energy required to digest the protein will signal to the body that there's a little bit more energy than normal, 5 times as much compared to, say, carbohydrates and fats. Therefore, can we release some glucagon to put the blood glucose up a little bit? That's it. That's what happens. But it's not coming from the protein. And it is exactly as you say, when you over-consume protein, there is a possibility of a little bit of hypoglycemia. But it is not a pathology. It's a physiology. It's what the body does. It just makes sure you got enough energy to digest it. That's it. There is no problem here at all. So, so that's the gluconeogenesis part. So, the gluconeogenesis comes from glucagon. So hopefully that is helpful for you there. But we do talk about this at least once a month, because it just
can I just jump in and add something to that quickly, Steve? Have we got time?
Yeah.
So look, I mean, this fear comes from a study that is done on carbohydrate. So what allows us to be in a ketogenic state is the insulin to glucagon ratio. We want low insulin and elevated glucagon. When we eat excessive amounts of protein on a high carb lifestyle, this increases the glucagon ratio by as much as 2,000%, which, if that translated to a ketogenic or carnivore-based lifestyle, that would be enough to pull one from a ketogenic state. But when we look at this, and it's the study that does this on a ketogenic or carnivore-based lifestyle, and we increase extra protein without the carbohydrate, the insulin to glucagon ratio remains unchanged as a whole number. I think it moves by 5 or 6% basically as a percentage, but by a whole number, it remains unchanged. So these things come from studies to do with standard lifestyles, which are high and excess in carbohydrate. When we are living an animal-based or evolutionary appropriate lifestyle, These things just don't translate. So eating X amount of protein is not going to pull one from a ketogenic state.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, so sorry if I sound a little bit fed up, but we do get that question ever such a lot. And there are three mechanisms. I mean, Richard has mentioned the glucagon as well. So yes, always remember, when someone says too much, you can have too much water. It doesn't mean the thing is dangerous. It means too much. So if I was to suddenly sit down and eat 5 pounds of steak, and I ate through my satiety signals and just kept pounding it and pounding it down, I'm going to have a problem. I'm going to have a problem because too much. Also, if I got 8 glasses of water and drank those throughout the day, I would have a problem. That's way too much water. And there you go. My body would tell me it's too much water by making me urinate. And when I'd look at my urine, it would be clear. And I'd be like, wow, all I'm doing is urinating out all that water. Of course, there would be electrolytes in that and things like that. So anyway, let's move on to the next one. And here we go. I've got to make this bigger because I can't read when I minimize the screen. So let's get back to that. 1 year carnivore, meat patty. Oh, that's nice. If you're looking at the video, you'll understand it's 2 different spellings. Audio podcast people, it's meat, MEAT, patty, PATTY, and then meat, MEET, PATTI. That's great. 1 year carnivore, got bad skin rash around eyes on Thursday. Weed to doc, got prescription, threw away meds and ate lots of beef. Rash is gone. Meat heals. There you go. Excellent. Right. Emma. Sorry, I've got to plug Emma because she's my producer of my audiobook, my Guide to Bloods in the context low carb, keto and carnivore, and the narrator. So hello, Emma. Just eating any amount of meat in the AM makes me very sleepy within 1 hour, but after 5 p.m. it doesn't. Eggs and cheese don't seem to cause that problem in the AM. Sleep 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. typically. Can I change this?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's I'm not a fan of eating too early in the morning. If we look, so when I was first introduced or came across the ketogenic way of living, I was introduced to intermittent fasting and skipping breakfast because we hear that whole thing of breakfast spells break fast, and it does. This is how we break our fast. And the best thing that we could do since sliced bread, which apparently wasn't too good for us in the first place, was to skip breakfast. So I began to do that, noticed fantastic gains, and I went along my merry way. Recent studies have come out to show now that the best way to increase metabolism is to eat early in the morning and not skip breakfast. Lots of ketogenic and carnivore advocates have gone along this way of thinking. So I've tested it. I've gone back. I've looked at the research. And it's easy to look at numbers on a screen or in a report. How does that translate to real life? It doesn't translate to me. If I eat first thing in the morning, I become incredibly sleepy. I become incredibly hungry and I end up over consuming. So it's absolutely counterintuitive for me. And I've noticed that this translates across the board in regards to clients that I work with also. So, I mean, for me, I try to avoid eating first thing in the morning. The reason that I think eggs and cheese don't cause the problem is I think they're far easier to digest. They're fatty. Cheese is fantastic for me in regards to energy. If I'm looking for a pick-me-up, although I am maybe 4 or 5 weeks cheese-free. So I drop the cheese around the time that I quit coffee, which I'm still coffee-free. So I find that cheese and eggs does work a little bit better for me. But if I'm eating beef or lamb or steak first thing, then that does cause problems. But if you can get away without eating first thing in the morning, then why would you want to eat first thing in the morning?
Yeah, I think Emma's very much she records everything and really logs stuff. So I think that'd be very helpful. So thanks for that, Richard, and thank you, Emma, for the question. We go to the next question. Right, Gemma has secured tickets for the High Rocks event in November. Any training tips for the next few months? I see Jonathan Carnivore Muscle was here, so I don't know if he's going to that. Are you going to that, Richard? It's a exercise sort of fitness event.
Yeah, I think, and I may be wrong, but I think it's on the 29th of November. I may actually be there. So I may be there. Yeah. So just security tickets, any training tips? Okay,
What's your goals, Gemma?
yeah.
We need to ask that, don't we?
So look, high rocks is it. In fact, it's probably the perfect sport for me because I've gravitated into running and cycling. I'm pretty quick considering I'm not a runner, and I'm still pretty strong because I used to weightlift. So this seems to be it's almost like a CrossFit type event. Do your high rocks training. You're probably part of a high rocks gym, but don't neglect the cardio. Make sure you get the cardio in, particularly zone 2 work. You need to keep your heart rate in zone 2. Ideally, you want to do this around half the time, as long as you're adapted into producing ketones efficiently. You need the speed work also, so good track sessions, concentrating on intervals of high speed work. That's going to help also. Ideally, you want to do maybe 4 of these sessions a week. But the high rocks training, they're very particular. It's specific movements that you wouldn't do in a standard gym. So beyond adding in and making sure you don't neglect the cardio, just make sure your nutrition's on point. Avoid the carbohydrates, avoid the foods that contain lectins and phytic acids, because these block the body's ability to absorb nutrients. Make sure you consume your protein with your fat, because this allows the body to increase muscle protein synthesis, and it allows us to absorb the amino acids a lot more efficiently. The co-ingestion of protein and fat, we've seen many times, allows us to increase muscle protein synthesis, but carb consumption with protein does not. But high rocks is very much an individual thing. So just don't neglect the cardio. Make sure you get plenty of the zone 2 and the opposite end of the scale in regards to the interval training and high intensity.
Yeah, I think training, I just want to broaden it out. Don't forget your goal. Okay. If you want big muscles, it's different. If you want to run very fast, it's different. If you want to be able to have big muscles and run very fast, it's virtually impossible, so unless you're sprint training. So just it's always goal driven what your training should be. I know I'm being a bit glib and flippant there, but people like Keto Savage, I think, is very interesting. We were talking on a podcast and I said, is it possible to gain muscle and lose fat at the same time? You went, yes, but it's really difficult. And that's it in a nutshell. Some people need to gain the muscle and then cut, which is why bodybuilders have been doing that since the get-go. And some people can be lean all year round and still gain muscle, which was my training partner when I did my bodybuilding show back when I was 23, which was many years ago. So, yeah. And we've got Jonathan listening, and we've got a question coming up from him in a minute. So he might be able to put a little bit of feedback in. But here's Emma. Run out of Richard's electrolytes and had to use another brand I already had. Leg cramps and loose stools returned. Now back on Keto Pro and my cramps subsided. It is definitely conferring a benefit. So that's good. Now I got a question from Carnivore Muscle. And one of the things everyone knows that we're good friends, Carnivore Muscle, Richard, myself, we do the Team GB, but we're not an echo chamber. And we all have different opinions about things, and we ask questions. And I think that's one of the good things about this environment. So Richard, this is from Carnivore Muscle. Richard often mentions that excess calcium beyond requirements causes heart disease. This isn't correct in the context of sufficient carnivore diet, which I think we always make clear that if you are eating the right amount of food, and maybe we don't make it clear enough, you may not need to worry about these sort of things. But anyway, Jonathan's asking, what study are you referring to with the calcium?
Yeah, there's 3 studies. I'll send them over to you, John. 3 studies that look at excessive. One looks at supplementation. The other looks at calcium intake through diet. But they all come down to the same thing. But if we consume an evolutionary appropriate diet, then our calcium is always within range. It's never in excess. Beef contains calcium. Eggs are a fantastic source of calcium. Cheese and dairy, in regards to A2, fantastic, brilliant sources of calcium. It's more to do with the ratio of calcium to magnesium, because we require a 1-to-1 ratio within the cells. And what we find is that our requirement for magnesium increases massively if we overconsume or consume in excess in regards to the milk and the cheese and so on and so forth. But if we are living a traditional evolutionary appropriate diet in regards to a carnivore lifestyle, then we're not going to be over consuming on calcium. If we are consuming lots and lots and lots of cheese, or milk, then it could be a problem. The ranges, I think, were between 500 and 700 milligrams. That seemed to be the turning point in regards to increased risk by 15%. But if you're eating beef, organ meats, and a little bit of cheese and eggs, you're going to be well below the 500 milligrams. You don't have to overconsume these greatly and consistently. I mean, just over-consuming on 1 to 2 days isn't going to do this. This is going to be a consistent overconsumption. But this is why I'm not a big fan of calcium supplementation unless you have a calcium deficiency. And then this is another issue again then. Then, said person would need extra calcium for whatever reason. So it is very much an individual thing. And we are all different. Technically, we're all biologically the same, but we all find that we're in different situations, and our requirements, for these molecules can be greatly differentiated. There we are. That's the
That's the word one. Yeah, and I mean, one of the things I say, people worry that we're not getting calcium. Well, lions, they can have cubs, and the lioness can provide milk. They are not eating cheese, and they're not taking calcium supplements. So they are eating muscle meat, and they must be getting enough calcium to be able to produce milk. And that's true of many animals in the animal kingdom. So there is calcium in meat. And, anyway, I think a lot of people don't believe that, and they think that they're eating the cheese or they're drinking the milk because they've read that that's good for their bones. And I think it's all down to mainstream misinformation, basically. Keto Pro, I think.
Steve,
sorry,
can I just really quickly add to that? Look, calcium is essential. It's one of the minerals that exists in every single cell in the body. So I'm not saying that calcium isn't important also. It is incredibly important. And I think it's something like less than 1% make up the minerals within the body. But calcium is one of those compounds that exists. It's one of 6 compounds that exists in every single cell within the body. So it is very, very important. But the point that I'm trying to make when I talk about calcium is that we certainly don't need to supplement with in a normal state. And I think that we have been led down the garden path in regards to our requirement for X amount of calcium. Yes, calcium builds bone, but bone is mineralized protein, is created from proteins and minerals, calcium included. But to send that calcium to the bone, we need to increase sodium. Taking a calcium supplement won't slow down degradation of the bone. So if we're taking calcium supplements for that, then they're not required. We just need to increase protein and salt. But there are other issues which may need to be addressed in regards to supplementation. But I'm not saying the calcium isn't required. It's essential. But I do believe that if we eat our lifestyle, an evolutionary appropriate lifestyle, then we can obtain all of the nutrients that we need, unless obviously you are devoid and suffer with another pre-existing condition that would evolve us or allow us to consume more. But calcium, same as everything else, we need the right amount, plain and simple.
Yes, absolutely. We're going back to that old adage that too much is too much. The same as not enough is not enough. Right. Annette Stevens, I'd really like to know the number of grams of protein in my 227 gram rump steak cooked medium rare. Thank you. I mean, a real rough rule of thumb is 25% of the weight of an uncooked piece of meat. So if it's 227, about 25% of that is about 55 grams of protein. That's what I would say.
Spot on. Yeah, I always work it out. It's depending on the cut of animal protein, because some are around 20 and some are 25, as you say. I normally use the rule of 22 and a half, just to put it somewhere in the middle. But a quarter, as a rough estimate, a quarter of that is going to be your protein.
Yeah. Right, that's great. Once a week man, big follower of the show. I think this is a nice little segue, actually, before we get into this question. Richard, could you tell us a little bit about, I've got a screen share. I've got another screen share. It's so boring for people, but let's do the screen share. And for those that are listening on the audio, I will read what the screen share says, because you might want to just tell people a little bit about this. So on the screen now is a thing called Ancestral Health Festival, 17th and 18th of August, 2024. And it's the 16th to the 19th of August for campers. Are you doing this, Richard?
I am speaking at this event, indeed.
And what are you saying? What are you talking about?
I'm not going to tell you. You have to come and see.
Okay, right. Okay, well, it's an event that, can I mention the speakers? Phil Escott, and we got Ben Hunt, we got Richard Smith, Dr. Sarah Pugh, Daz Nesbitt, Nikita Stark, I think you pronounce that, some idiot called Stephen Thomas, and we're all speaking at this Ancestral Health event. If you want to know more about it, just give me an email and I'll tell you all about it. So let's get rid of that. Right. So Once a Week Man, who has, the reason I say that is because he met us at the last thing we did together, which was pretty amazing. So Once a Week Man, does muscle meat contain collagen, or do we need to eat skin and gristle?
Yes, but it's probably not enough. Collagen is made up of several amino acids that are found within muscle meat, but to get the quantities that we need, ideally, we need to eat the cartilage on the bone, the skin. As Stephen's done a video on this as well, and it's had some incredible views. The skin that surrounds the egg, that is between the eggshell, eat that. That's an incredible source of collagen. The connective tissue on bones. So if you buy, your beef, don't cut the edges off. If you buy it on the bone, tear that connective tissue off. It's incredibly tough, but it is worth eating. I cut it up into small little pieces because, especially with lamb, I find that the connective tissue on there can almost become so tough that it's like plastic, and it's difficult to chew. Chop it up into tiny pieces, even if you need to cut it with a pair of scissors. Other sources, again, the knuckles on the chicken, bone marrow, or bones in general. Bone broth is another good source. We can get everything we need from nature, but it always pays to eat the skin from the fish and the chicken skin and the knuckles and the connective tissue. And if you think that you are devoid, then you can use a supplement, a collagen supplement. There would be a reason not to do that also, but let's not get too deep in the weeds. But collagen is essential. Type 1 and type 3 in particular. There are many, many types of collagen. I think there's well over 30 types from memory. I may be wrong there actually, but there's a lot of different types of collagen with the body. One being the predominator through the body, which is type 1, which is a marine type collagen. Although type 3 also contains type 1, and type 3 then is going to help with intestinal healing, arterial walls, and so on and so forth. The type 1 is going to help with connective tissue, hair, skin, nails. Again, the arterial walls, the joints, the ligaments. So this is the glue, if you like, that holds the body together. Just eat as nature intended. Just eat as nature intended. You should be able to obtain all of these things through an adequate lifestyle based on predominantly muscle meats and the connective tissues.
Absolutely. And I did a nice video with Dr. Abs, who lit up the 24-hour live stream, by the way. And he was talking about collagen and amino acids. It was rather good. If you didn't see it, look out for the edited version of the appearance of Dr. Abs. Right. Lisa is asking, is supplementing with C8 MCT only or mixed with C10 better for optimal top-end lifting, strength, and performance? Powerlifting.
Yeah, hey Lisa. I always preference C8. C8 is the quickest to convert. C10 is slightly longer, obviously 2 carbons more. C10 is going to give C8 is going to give you that instant energy, and only C8 has been shown to increase ketone levels by as much as 300%. C10 doesn't have the same effect. There are places to consume C10, but get these from animal proteins. C10 is more likely to cause gastro issues, gastro distress. Other brands will also add C12, which to me isn't even a medium chain. I would consider that more longer chain. But these companies buffer out the blends of C8 and C10 to lower the cost. C8 is considerably more expensive than C10. And in fact, is considered a commodity. C8 is traded as a commodity. It's incredibly expensive and difficult to get. And we are about to come into a worldwide shortage of C8. So if you are a lover of oils and powders, be warned that there is going to be a massive shortage coming up. I've got lots of supplies. We've made sure that we're going to be well stocked for this when it happens. But if you are, I think Lisa might be US based. If you're based in the US and you're a user of C8, then stockpile, because the shortages may be coming shortly. But C8 for me.
Right, Richard, just very quickly, I want a short answer because we're running out of time, but it will answer a lot of questions I get, especially on my audio podcast version of this. If people want to buy your supplements and they live abroad, can they get them shipped? So the two main areas are obviously America and in Australia.
Yes, in short, it's much more difficult since Brexit. It's very difficult to ship. What we can't guarantee currently is whether there may be duty to pay when it arrives at the other end. We don't know this. It's different with every state. It's different with every country, different with localities within different countries. We are setting up a means to do this where it's front loaded, where it will be delivery duty paid. But this is going to be a few weeks, couple of months in the making. So that will be available. So basically, before long, when you get to checkout, all deliveries and duties will be accrued there before making payments. So there'll be no nasty surprises. We do currently ship. We can ship anywhere. If you get to checkout and your country is not listed or it won't allow you to proceed, drop me an email. Or drop the business an email, which is info@keto-pro.co.uk. Tell the guys that you want a shipment delivered to your address. Provide them with your address, and we will get a quotation from a courier company. We don't charge extra for delivery. What we charge is what you pay. So we don't make any profit on the cost of shipping. And we can do that. So we can ship anywhere. We can ship anywhere in the world. Just reach out if you get to checkout and it isn't an option available for you.
That's excellent. Lee's got a question. Welcome, Lee, new member, which is great. Thank you for joining. Don't forget you can join school if you haven't already. It's less than it's $4 a month, which is less than $1 a week. And you get all the live streams, you get all the question and answers, you get to meet other members. Anyway, lots of courses. Right, Lee is asking, even though extra thick double cream is really low carb, negligible per teaspoon, is it really doing much harm?
So look, it's double cream was something that I used a lot in the early days. It's a fantastic way to make sure that you're getting plenty of fats in. Fat is our friend. We shouldn't fear fat. But also the other side of the coin is true. If we overconsume in fats, then it can lead to a stall or weight gain. Although it is very difficult to overconsume on fat. I think it's a fantastic tool initially. So when I was drinking coffee, for example, and I was addicted to milk, I'd remove the milk and I'd use double cream, super low carb, high in fat, fantastic. And I used it for many years. It worked very well as a tool for me. Double cream is a type of dairy. It does contain casomorphine, which is highly addictive and can cause intestinal permeability. So it can lead to intestinal issues, but we tend to find if you are removing the lectins in the form of wheat germ agglutinin and phytohemagglutinin, that you're far less likely to suffer with intestinal permeability from casein. So look, I'd use it as a tool. If it's a crutch that you need to allow you to move forward, then it's one of the better things to consume if you're drinking things like coffee, for example. You don't need to glug lots of this down for health benefits. In fact, quite the opposite. Use as much as you need and no more. It's not something that you can just drink unlimited. It will cause problems if you drink it by the bucket load, which, I'd buy a carton, I'd add like half of my cup would be double cream in a coffee. And then I'd take mouthfuls of it, while I was making that tea and coffee. And Stephen and I, same as Jonathan and the rest of Team Carnivore, will tell you that it's not the calories. Calories don't exist in the context that we believe them to. But at some point, this additional energy is going to not be used and it will be stored. So the overconsumption of fat in the end will lead to fat gain because we are consuming more energy, not calories, but more energy. The calorie thing we can get into more detail next time, but use it as a tool if you need to, but it's not essential and don't overdo it.
Excellent. Right. Okay. The football starts in 3 minutes, the final. England They haven't been in the final for many, many years. I'm 60. I've never seen England win any tournament ever. So when they won the World Cup in 1966, I was 2 years old. So I've never seen England win anything. So I'm going to wrap up today's live. I'm sorry if you hate football and you want to talk carnivore, but it's only once in a lifetime. I don't think we're ever going to get to another final. But anyway, so I'm going to say thank you. There is no apple crumble tonight because I will be doing that. I'll be shouting at the television and either being bitterly disappointed within the next couple of hours or happy that I've watched something that I've never seen before. So I do appreciate all your questions. Herbert, a fantastic question about triglycerides. And if you want to ask that in school tomorrow or you want to do it next week, just fast forward it and we will put that on top of our list, because why are high triglycerides a problem is such a great question. The word high, for instance, who says high is bad? We need to look at the 4 or 5 brilliant things that triglycerides do. But anyway, thank you very much. Richard, do you want to say goodnight to everybody?
Thank you all. Stephen, absolute pleasure as always. Great to see your beautiful face. Full of enthusiasm as always. Thank you all for watching, listening, and asking questions. Thank to you all. We will log it up now and see you at the same time next week, hopefully.
Yeah, unless you're a school community member, of course, and we will see you tomorrow at 8 p.m.
Spot on. Brilliant. Thank you all.